Hi, I'm Seungah, an artist teacher working at a secondary school in the UK. Based on my experience, I made Young Artist Art and Education project, No Frame.
Within the last 3 years, I'd say, I've received the most amount of homophobic comments, but just from random people. So during the summer of last year, I was leaving work. My boyfriend came to meet me after work, and we started walking, and this guy came up to us and he started laughing at us, and he was sort of saying lots of other things. And yeah, it got quite heated, and I told him to, get on his bike, and we were very cross with him, and we shouted and lots of expletives, and we stuck up for ourselves. But that was the first time I'd really experienced anyone actually coming up to me and saying something right to my face. I thought, should I go to the police? Should I find someone? And I just think that person's long gone. They've walked away. And if I go to the police and I say this has happened, they might report it, write it down, note that it happened today in the city, but they're not going to find that person. They're not going to reprimand them. They're not going to tell them off. It's terrible that it happens, but you just kind of have to live with it. And it shouldn't be, but it is something that is quite often just brushed off by the queer community or by people as that's just something you have to put up with. That's just something that a lot of people think has gone, but it really, I think there has been a rise, certainly. And thankfully, I haven't been in any part of violent attacks. In cases of racism, in cases of Islamophobia, in cases of sexism, and it's really quite scary. It's scary. It's almost like history repeats itself. We sort of go back to this time where people feel that they're able to say these things. So I'm tearing up a little bit. I always get teary when I am talking about something I'm very passionate about. So yeah, certainly when I get very, very emotional about a topic or something that I really care about, I do tear up. It's not sadness. It's passion. It's passion about something that's really important to talk about and to get across. I do tear up, but it's not bad. It's not. It's okay to cry.
That they're minority, they have to live with so many perceptions and confusions, and they need to be even more brave to live their life, facing challenges in different times in their life, and being categorized and is duty, heavy duty. I think it's so important for people to hear about this, understand about this, to reduce the gap more and more and more.
I agree with you a lot about that. Trans people are kind of the most affected by hate. Lots of people, especially at the moment, lots of things, coming out about, well, sort of in the cult of celebrity, kind of J.K. Rowling, what she said about her views on trans people were really, really, really damaging. It was the subject of trans people using the toilets that they want to use. So she was concerned that there would be that there would be trans women using women's bathrooms, but in a sinister way. And she was talking about her own experiences of abuse. But it's kind of a non-issue because people just want to use the bathroom that they want. There may be a small minority of people who are going to do horrible things. There's always going to be people who do horrible things, but you can't stop trans people from using the bathroom they want to use because you're worried that they might attack you. They're not. They just want to use the loo. They just want to use the loo.
And is it like a before surgery?
Not all trans people have surgery. It's just about them living their life as they feel they are. What's known as a trans exclusionary radical feminist. So quite this sort of niche group of feminist groups came together to say that trans women are men, which is not true. So Orlando by Virginia Woolf that started off the project was written in 1928. And around that time and before then, there was the first gender reassignment. But people now are really talking about it in a negative way. They're also amplified in a positive way. But there are also going to be people that disagree with you, as with all things.
What is the right attitude to see this? It is the nature for them, the way they born with, their natural instinct. And then that needs to be respected the way it is.
And it's strange because even asking the question to me, that is a natural, that doesn't need explaining. It's difficult to answer that question because that is just normal. It doesn't need explaining to anyone. But I think to some people it does, or perhaps not explaining to them, but actually bringing to light something that affects you that will get them to think about it, and it affects them. So like the whole Black Lives Matter, the way that I see it for that is bringing a problem that affects the Black community or people of colour. It shows it or brings it up to people like me who have white privilege, view it as a problem, and it will only be solved if I see it as a problem rather than a problem that is for another community or people to deal with. And so certainly for me, there are similarities within putting out that message for the queer community, so that people who aren't queer have to kind of look at it and think about it and make that choice as to what they're going to do about it, in order to be accepting of people who are different. Use my privilege in order to talk about it in the most sensitive way that I can, to get people to think about sex and about gender and about kind of masculinity and femininity, and looking at my piece made out of welded industrial section together and then bent, so its form is manipulated, and it's then covered in pink flock. Thinking about how you look at the piece and that changing the material, but also the shape in creating that bend, vaginal, on many levels. It kind of works as dialogue about that changing from whatever to whatever. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. There is a direct quote from someone, but certainly I agree with them, whoever it was, that art is about, a fundamental of art is about challenging people and how they perceive the world. When I made the piece about the Stonewall riots, porcelain cube is compressing the steel blocks, and you kind of think, why is this happening? But for me, it was a representation of the strong people within the Stonewall riots, that those queer people beneath were being squashed by the sort of heteronormative world in 1969. They are resilient and they are there strong. And I showed that to people, and a lot of people read it very differently. They read it as about race. That's not how I intended it, but it's absolutely fine to view it like that. It's about how art speaks to anyone who sees it, really, what they see from it.
I really agree with your favorite quote. And that's ultimately how art changed the world.
I think it is about responsibility. You know, I have a responsibility as a queer person to sort of not educate, but I mean, perhaps slightly educate, but kind of, if you're confronted by something that you're not used to, perhaps you either want to learn more about it and you're fascinated by it, or you want nothing to do with it, don't want to look at it, even for a tiny, tiny moment when they're in a gallery. If they're looking at the work, that affects them directly. You talking to them through the artwork that they're seeing, even if they don't like it. But it's about bringing that message to people that perhaps wouldn't ordinarily. But then there is a sort of backlash to that. If you're not the kind of person that goes to an art gallery, that message might not reach you. But we can try our best.
Theo, I'm so proud of you. You carry on, you young artist who cares and understand about that responsibility. So proud of you, and you carry on.
Thank you.
And although you said reaching fraction of people who only comes to art gallery, but I'm sure those people who elsewhere, like working in their own areas, doing their bit, like what you do in their part of their world. So it will come together. So don't feel that I'm only in the small corner, but actually you're doing your bit.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you so much for being you and the way you are. You created some kind of echo in my heart.